From In the Beginning to the Musical Apocalypse, this is The Bible Says What? I'm your host, Mike Wiseman. Spider-Man has taught me that with great power comes great responsibility. The Christian God has great power, but how does he use it? He uses it to seek glory and praise for himself. I don't see that as a noble cause. He desires to be exalted and to have every living creature bow down before him whether they like it or not. These are not honorable actions worthy of worship or even respect. And then to punish everyone who does not know him or love him with an eternal punishment is just monstrous. Does Spider-Man seek glory and praise for himself? Does he punish those who do not love him? No, he doesn't seek out glory for himself, and he saves those who hate him. The choice is clear. Spider-Man is greater than the Christian deity. Why would anyone want to worship an egotistical madman? Praise Spider-Man. Let's start the show.
Is there anything in the Bible that you yourself have an issue with? Okay, so it took you reading the Bible to realize that those things were bad for you?
Yeah, it actually did. I didn't
figure this out on your own?
No, Ted Bundy could be redeemed. God doesn't kill children.
What do you think the Passover was? Yahweh sets up a whole system in the Old Testament where you slaughter animals just so he's able to forgive you.
Today's special guest is returning guest, Christian podcaster Elle Edwards. Welcome back to the show, Elle.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's lovely to be here.
Awesome. It's great to see you again. It's been such a long time. So I hear you started another podcast.
I have.
Tell us a little bit about that.
It's called Lead by Design. And so it starts with this premise that if you're human, you're a leader. And so in essence, it's simply lots of different conversations with lots of different leaders about the adventures that they're on with God. And so I get to hear lots of stories, which you already know. I mean, your format's slightly different, but like you already know, talking to lots of different humans is generally awesome, apart from the times it's not. But so far, I haven't had the exception to the rule. So it's been lots of fun. And I hear things from people, even people who I thought I knew really well. I'm like, oh, I did not know that was part of your story. So it's been really good fun, I got to say.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, no, it's definitely the best part of the job is just talking to all these different people from all over the world. So that's a lot of fun. Absolutely.
It's the editing afterwards. I was like, you were very brave, mine, because you invited me back, I think, before you'd even actually published my first episode. Yep. So I don't know if that shows a great big dose of faith or you're just having a day. I don't know, but it's my pleasure to be back. So thank you.
Well, we've been talking for so long, it's only a matter of time before you come back for a second, third, I don't know, maybe fourth. Four. I think four is the top. So I had a guest on 4 times. This is the top.
Wow. Oh, fair play.
Yeah. He hasn't been back. I could contact him, actually. Thank you for that. But, thanks for going back. Thanks for taking the time, 100%. Appreciate it. I know last time we talked about a wide range of things.
We did. Yeah,
I did listen.
So go on.
I did listen to it since then. Have you listened to it since then?
Not since, no. I didn't. No. I haven't gone back. I don't tend to listen to myself back too often because otherwise when I do, I pick up on my sort of idiosyncrasies and the certain words that I say too many times. No, I haven't.
No, but I totally understand that. Yeah, I had an entire podcast where I think I said justification like 20 times, and I was just like, "Oh my God!"
Drinking game with that, mind. You could play a game with yourself, couldn't you? Every time you say you.
There are drinking games associated with the show. I've heard of them in the past.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so good to know. But it was actually really good and interesting experience for me, aside from the fact that you're really good fun. But it was like we were chatting briefly beforehand and we said I'll never read the comments, but there was actually one of the comments, I mean, there's somebody who found the experience of me talking to you painful, and if they're back to watch this episode, then consider me giving you a gold star, although I suspect they won't because they know what they're letting themselves in for. But there was an interesting comment about, it said, I'm paraphrasing, but they in essence said, these guests, they're all the same, they never really reflect on what they're talking about and they never learn from it. And actually if that's true, I might be the exception to that, because the piece that you don't know, I maybe alluded to you in a little bit in an email, after we got off air. Remember I said to you, you might not remember because it was a long time ago, I said to you, look, God is love, and there are bits in the Bible that are really messy, and I'm like, there's got to be something else going on here, which is totally not an acceptable answer for you, and I respect that and I get it, and that's fine. But I said to one of my friends afterwards, and she said, well, I've got a book you should read, and I've been talking to this people and that people, and I've been on this whole journey, and there's a book, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget the name of it. It's called A More Christ-Like Word by a guy called Brad. I'm going to slaughter his surname now. Brad Jersak. I might have mentioned him to you on email, because have you met him already? You've spelled him?
No, that's a good try with the last name there.
I'm British. I don't know. It's spelled Jersak. So I don't know how. Perfect. He's Canadian. So I don't know how Canadians pronounce. How would you pronounce his surname?
Oh yeah, Jersak. Yeah, Jersak. Right there with Jersak. You. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if I was doing my homework,
A or a boot in there because it's
maybe
Canadian.
Yeah, because the extra emphasis on the end. Anyway, he has this book called A More Christ-Like Word, which he wrote this book, a first book about was it a more Christ-like God or something? Anyway, he was maintaining that God is love, and so these people said to him, "Yeah, but what about this bit of the Bible? What about this bit of the Bible?" And his book is in response to that. And I've read it twice now, and it's just been fascinating. It's taken me on this whole journey to go, actually, not all of the Bible is necessarily true in the way that we have been brought up as being true. We say 2 Timothy 3:16 about, inspired by God, but it's not literally dictated. So it has been just an incredible journey, because he maintains that actually Jesus is the ultimate picture of who God is. And so therefore, everything that you read needs to be filtered through Jesus. And if you read something that doesn't look like Jesus or doesn't smell like Jesus, then that's humans telling the story, and actually maybe God didn't really say it. So it's just been bonkers. So that's the journey I've been on, thanks to you, Michael, over the last few months. You're welcome. Thanks for that.
I do what I can. That's interesting, though. So in an essence, it's kind of like what you were saying previously, as far as if you don't like it, if it doesn't sound like God is love, then that's not a real story. Yeah.
So what he's, and I have to have the what can I say? That the caveat's the wrong word. I have to say, this is a journey I'm on. I don't come here today with all the answers. I'd be honest, although I'd already pushed this out once because of Mothering Sunday, we have ours in a different month to you Americans. And so that was a genuine reason why I needed to reschedule. But a part of me was a bit like, oh, maybe I need to reschedule it again because I still don't have all the answers. And God was like, no, just go and talk to him. It's fine. So I don't have all the answers to this because for me, it bumps up against everything that I grew up with in terms of evangelical Christianity, and there will be, not everything, but lots of stuff. And so but I think for me, it was like, I never really expected to have any of those answers this side of whatever's to come. And so it's just been really interesting. But yeah, in essence, what he's saying is that, there's a quote, and I should have written down who said it. This guy said, why is the Bible so messy? Because God let his kids tell the story. There's bits in there. I know, isn't that a great quote? And if you read that book by Brad, he quotes this dude, and I've forgotten his name. And I thought, wow. And it's funny then, because I don't know if your ears have been burning over the last few months, but we have had conversations. Have they been burning loads? Yeah. Well, it might be partly our fault, because I was speaking there's a lady called Donna inside my community. She's our spiritual director. And I said, I'm talking to Michael again soon. And she said, Michael who? I said, well, Michael the Beloved. I've told you, that's what we know you as. Yeah. And I said, I can almost hear him saying it now, because he's going to say to me, because if I get a chance, I'm going to tell him about this book that I've been reading. And he's going to say to me, yeah, but why would God do that? Because surely he should make it more straightforward and not make it confusing for people.
Or let his children write the book. I mean,
exactly.
If I had the opportunity to let my kids write a story, or to write my story, I wouldn't give it to my kids and go, have fun with that. No way. Especially if something that's so important as saving the planet, saving the people, something like that. I don't think it would be a smart idea to put it in the hands of your children.
But I hear you, and I could hear you saying
but it. He knew that ahead of time, right?
Well, yeah, he knew that. But also, if you think of the Bible instead of being what's the word I'm looking for? Like an ever sort of evolving, but not evolving as an evolution sense. But their awareness of who God was. I mean, this is not going to be a creation episode. I'm on the fence. As an aside, I can believe in a God that made the world in 6 literal days, but I also, it's not the hill I'm going to die on, because I'm like, we're also told that a day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years is like a day. So I'm like, well, time, yeah. Anyway, that's not my point. But what was I going to say? Yeah. So if it's so Adam and Eve walking in the Garden of Eden, way back when, and I say all this, we have to park the fact that you don't believe any of this is true, of course, but run with me on this one.
Yes.
Yeah. I know you do this every time, but so Adam and Eve walking in with God in the cool of the day, all of that good stuff. Like they had a face-to-face relationship with God. That was always his intention. Yeah, I mean that expression face-to-face. I don't quite know what that looks like because God is a spirit, but I don't know. Who knows?
Does he have
but
a
anyway,
face?
well, I don't know. I mean, we're told there's more power in his little finger than all the forces of evil combined. So if he has fingers and no face, that would be weird, wouldn't it? But I don't know.
The weirdest part of the story, that's for sure. But go ahead.
I suppose not. That's true. Yeah.
Adam and Eve.
Yeah, no. So they had this, whatever that relationship looked like, whatever communication looked like, they were, we would probably say they were the closest people in relationship with God until the whole drama with, turning away from God, etc. And in that turning, their picture of God gets broken, their understanding. And so if we think of the Bible as an unpacking and a journey of people back into understanding who God is and how he wants to be known, and then Jesus has been the ultimate ta-da of that. I don't know if Jesus ever said ta-da, but I wish he did with jazz hands. That would be so
maybe when
cool.
he was done. Ta-da!
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's we're recording this Easter week, isn't that quite running? Yeah, but
oh no, it is.
Yeah. But so then it becomes more about the unfolding relationship. I mean, didn't we touch upon last time my personal belief about the fact that I don't see this as 80 years on the planet. You've got to pray the prayer, and if you don't, you're and so therefore, if this is if this is all part of an unfolding journey into relationship with God, and he's playing the very long game, then it doesn't feel as irresponsible. Yes, within the context of our blink in the eye moment of time, of course it does, because that's our only understanding.
That's our only understanding. You said it right there. That's the key. That's our only understanding. Yeah.
It is. And at the same time, we get pictures of other stuff that's going on, don't we? I mean, I personally, and I know you don't agree, but I personally believe there is so much more going on than what I can actually literally see right now in this room. And, such as
what's going on?
I don't know, all sorts of stuff.
Angels and demons fighting behind you, or what's going on?
I don't see stuff in the spirit very well at all. I'm not I haven't even got a mind's eye in the natural world, so I'm not really a seer. But so
I'm barely a seer of the real things,
So I know that's really jargony as well, isn't it? Sorry. But no, but just in terms of the bigger picture of what comes next, I don't. I think that's what I mean when I say there's more going on. But yeah, there probably absolutely has to be, angels and demons and all of that stuff. And some people do see those things, don't they?
Some people see Elvis. That doesn't mean they actually saw Elvis, though. I mean,
well, yeah, okay, fair enough.
People say all kinds of things.
True, this is true. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's difficult. It's difficult for someone like me who doesn't believe in the extra forces or anything that's behind you or going on. So you mentioned more going on as far as the big picture, though. What is the big picture here? What is the end? Because as far as what I read in the Bible, the end goal is to have Satan almost destroy this Yahweh's favorite people, and then Yahweh will come in at the end and save everybody. That's what I'm reading. So what is the big picture to you?
Yeah, so you talk about Revelation and all that good stuff.
The end, the end of it all.
Yeah, but even even the interpretation of Revelation until about 200 years ago, that sort of everything's going to get worse and worse and worse picture of the end time stuff, that wasn't mainstream. Until I think it was the Schofield Bible in 1900 and early 1900s. You might know because you've quite learned.
I'm working on it right now. I got Barterman's new book, Armageddon, so I'm working on that.
Have you read? So if you want to add another one to your list, there's another one called, because you must be an avid reader. I know you don't always, you read them all even when you don't.
As often as I can.
Wow. So there's another one called Victorious Eschatology. It's by Harold Urberly and what's his last name? Oh, Martin Trench, Dr. Martin Trench. Was he Dr. Harold Urberly? And I don't know. One of them's a doctor. Both of them might be a doctor. Who knows? But Harold Urberly and Martin Trench, and they've got this book called Victorious Eschatology, which actually maintains, it talks in various bits, about the kingdom. With Isaiah, for example, where it talks about, the Christmas verse, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, the government should be, his kingdom shall never end. The prophecies in Daniel, where it talks about this final kingdom. The alternative picture of end time stuff, and the one that was mainstream in the church until, like I say, about 200 years ago, was actually this of God's kingdom expanding, of life getting better and better, and so it's quite different to what's pictured by massive swathes of Christianity. Like we want to, and I don't actually understand why. I don't know whether that's because Christians want to have it as a way to explain the stuff that's messy, and using messy as a metaphor for all of the evil and all the rest of it. But I mean, we're recording this Easter week, but from that perspective, I know I didn't necessarily go out until after Easter, but it doesn't matter because the Easter story is still there. But from what Jesus did, it's done, it's finished. Like from his perspective and the bigger perspective, like Satan's already, vanquished was the word that came to mind. It's a very, I don't know.
Interesting. But he's still here though.
He's still around, isn't he? But I don't.
So not really vanquished.
Okay, so fighting a battle that he's already lost then.
Why would, okay, so there you go. So God is fighting a battle with the bad guy that he created.
I don't know that God is fighting a battle with Satan anymore, because that then puts Satan and God as equals when they're not. Like Satan is a fallen angel. He's like at best put him alongside Michael, one of Archangel Michael or Gabriel, or one of those dudes. You're now reminding me, there was a boy I taught years ago, and he was like a 15-16-year-old, and his name was Gabriel, and I was a supply, this is an aside, I was a supply teacher, like a substitute teacher in this classroom. Walked in, did this register, and I said, "Gabrielle, it's Gabriel, miss." I'm like, oh. So every time I did the register, in my head I said, "Angel, Gabriel," because I'm like, these 15-year-olds, you don't want to inflict the wrath of the 15-year-olds. No. But no, sorry, that was an aside, but just reminded me.
They're ruthless.
They are absolutely ruthless. But no, what I think is going on is more like whatever the opposite of birth pangs is, the after pangs of Satan, Lucifer, devil, whatever you want to call him, sort of trying to fight back a bit, but actually fighting a battle that he's already lost. He knows ultimately, he's read the book of Revelation. He knows that he's finished. The bit that I don't know about, and this ties back, remember I said to you before that I believe ultimately God in this age or the age to come is going to woo everybody into relationship with him.
Yes.
I don't know what that means for fallen angels, for example.
Interesting.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't asked God about that directly, but that's an interesting one to me. It's like, well, would given enough time, would Satan eventually, be like, roll over and be like a puppy in his tummy?
Weird.
I don't know.
But, so he is still here though. God is allowing him to do bad things right now, correct?
I don't know how, I'd have to go back and read Revelation again. I don't know how much of what goes on in the world is, we like to over spiritualize stuff. We like to assign some stuff to Satan when it's not. Because let's be honest, we're all humanity as humans. We make mistakes on our own. I don't know that every single evil act can be attributed to Satan. I don't know. I know what you're going to say now. You're going to say, but whether it's a little bit or all of it, God's still allowing Satan to be here.
As a father who, I try my best, but I would not allow a bad guy to run rampant. Especially if I have the power to stop him, restrain him, I would do that. First off, I wouldn't create a bad guy. That's right off the top. I wouldn't create a bad guy, and then I wouldn't release him upon my children, and then I wouldn't be like, "Oh, love me," or "The bad guy's going to get you." Oh, he's going to get you. No, come on, it doesn't add up. So how does that work for you?
Yeah, again, it's the answers you hate. It's the one. It's all part of a bigger picture that I don't have all the answers to. But the thing is, I recognize that, like I said to you last time, this is why I definitely won't do 4 episodes, because I get very repetitive otherwise. And you're like, "Oh no, we said this before." I'm sure. Although stuff comes out of my mouth and I forget what I've said as well, which is always good.
You're fine. Don't worry about it.
Let's hope your audience are equally as forgetful. Let's hope so, and that they haven't watched the previous one recently. But I have to acknowledge, there are things that I believe and things that come out of my mouth that will sound like nonsense to somebody who's not currently on that same journey. And so, for me, it all comes back to trust, which I know is this flag that I wave, which is completely unsatisfactory to you. And I respect that. And I get that. Yes, I can, like last time, I cannot disagree with you. From my perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I believe there's got to be more going on here that I understand. And I don't know whether part of that is around the I don't know, shaping us and for us to learn from. I don't really know. How many times did I say I don't know last time?
Well, I love I don't know. I don't know is honestly my favorite answer. I love it.
I know, yeah.
But to have kids with cancer as just a test or to make people better people.
Oh no, I don't.
talked to one lady
no.
whose daughter died, and she thought that God killed her daughter to make her a better Christian. To get her closer
See,
to
that
God,
kind of
things like that.
That kind of theology and that kind of like, I don't agree with that at all. The bit that I don't know about. So yes, I mean, God could like click his fingers if we had them. We've had that conversation already, but and immediately eradicate cancer. Why doesn't he do that? Because of some part of the bigger picture that I don't understand, which I recognize sounds nonsensical. And there are people that do get healed, but I personally don't believe that somebody's daughter is given cancer so that their mother can grow. I've got a family member who, I don't know that they still believe this, but they had several miscarriages, and they had this idea, this thought that, oh, maybe God knew that those babies wouldn't be in relationship with God, and that's why I miscarried. I know. I'm like, no, that's really messed up. No. I know, and unfortunately, there are huge proponents of people who call themselves Christians who peddle some really messed up stuff. I mean, the way that I came to know Jesus was messed up. It was all hellfire and brimstone. That's not the way that God wants to be known by us. And I guess because God lets us write the story, we don't get it right a lot of the time. But I think we're getting better. There are more of us who are having these conversations. Like, do you actually let God's love and the Father's heart and all that sort of stuff. There's still a long way to go, but I think I want to believe that we're getting better and better. But I know
I see us maturing as a species. I see a lot of people fighting back against that maturing progression. People don't like to progress with things; they like to regress for some reason. Doesn't make any sense to me. But I see it as a good thing, and I see it just as a natural thing. Not as a God coming in and going, okay, now you do a little bit better, do a little bit better. If God was going to come in and do something, I mean, I don't know. I think it would be more noticeable. Like, holy cow! Now all of a sudden, I don't know. I just can't think. Like Saddam Hussein's a great guy. All of a sudden, he's sorry for all of this stuff. Things like that. Or we can go to the Passover, which it is today. I think Passover Day, one of the most disgusting holidays. I think. I don't know why anybody would want to celebrate such a horrible day. We can get
do you not think that potentially, if ultimately humans are made in God's image, and this part of this maturity and growing as people, that could be God, like part of that process. I know you don't believe it is, but like that could be God part of that process. But he, for whatever reason, yes, he does. Like he has this outside voice that's loud and shouty, but that still small whisper is his inside voice. That's his relationship voice, isn't it? So it's more him showing up and doing the big stuff. Like I've had examples of God doing stuff that was big in my life, not like Saddam Hussein big or like, but so I have had experiences where he has showed up and shown off, even relatively recently. And so he does show up and do stuff, but you're right. It's not always in the way we expect it to be.
But what I'm saying is, like, how can you tell the difference between natural and supernatural? That's basically where I'm getting at. How can you tell by just natural progression versus God intervening slowly or slightly? How do you decipher that?
I don't know that there's necessarily it's a good question. I don't know that there's necessarily the same distinction for, like, if you look at the Jewish people, they didn't have like a spiritual life and a physical life. It was all just life. So if we're made in God's image, we're automatically supernatural. You could be laughing.
It's all just life. I like that.
So, but like you could maintain, like, I would maintain that every single child that your wife bore to you, or every baby that I gave birth to, was a miracle in itself. We like to put things in boxes, and yes, I know I said earlier on that we can't attribute everything to Satan, and so I'm guilty of it as well. It's dualism. So I don't know. There isn't any. I haven't got a neat answer to what you're saying. I think sometimes I've had occasions where, like, okay, some of your audience at this point are going to laugh because they laughed in the comments last time. Where I'll have conversations with God, and yes. I was weak laughing, like, sorry, that weak is a really Welsh expression. I sounded really Welsh then, but I'm not apologising for that. There was an expression in the comments, some of the comments that said, oh God, she couldn't remember what God said about the flood, because if God's like what she sounds like, he must talk like, That made me laugh a lot.
Don't
I was
read the
really-
comments, El.
I know. And I did for days afterwards. Like when the one said about, they never reflect. I'm like, but I am reflecting. I almost came back and commented out, no, don't. It's not gonna. This is not gonna end well. What was my point though? Oh yes, conversations with God. So there has been occasions where something has happened. I'm like, okay, God. Like, or maybe I've had like an idea has popped in my head. I'm like, is that me, God? Is that you?
Yes.
Like, and sometimes the idea is so like left of field. I'm like, that's got to be God, because that's crazy. But for me, it's about the relationship. And so the more that I do life with God and he shows up and stuff happens, those lines become a bit sort of blurry and a bit less. I mean, there are people who will drive around the supermarket and they'll be like, okay, help me find a parking space, God. They find a parking space. Thank you, God. And someone like you will be just like, well, no, it's because if you drive around the parking space enough time, around the park enough time, somebody is going to leave. But then I would say, well, yes, and at the same time, but maybe they were graced with supernatural patience to go a second time around the supermarket car park. We can, but we can over spiritualize everything, but we can under spiritualize everything too, can't we? But like
we can naturalize everything, because that's all we have is the natural. So that's where I go. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the talking with God again, because I have been thinking about this. And so what I did was I went and I did the L approach, as far as I can tell, the L approach. So I emptied my head and then I allowed God in. He was in there. Like, I visualized this, me sitting inside my head, just waiting for God to show up. God comes inside. Yahweh's in there. And he says, hello, Michael. And I ask him, all right, well, why'd you drown the kids in the flood? Well, because I wanted to. That was his answer. So I kicked him out. I said, get out of here. I don't need a child killer in my head that just wants to drown children. No, thank you. So I tried different gods. I tried Shiva. Shiva just sat there and drooled, and that didn't work out so well. Shiva had to get out of there. Then I tried Spider-Man. Spider-Man sat there and he gave me great advice. He was just, trust yourself, believe in yourself, do the best you can. Oh, man, thanks, Spider-Man. Oh, make a left here. Okay, I'll make a left here. Oh, avoided some traffic, but that doesn't mean Spider-Man's actually helping me out. That just means I've created this character of Spider-Man in my head, and now I'm conversing with this character. And it's all my own thoughts. But I can pretend, I guess is the word I'm looking for, pretend that the thoughts that he's coming up with are different than my own thoughts. But I know it's all just a story and fantasy that's going on in my head. So how do you differ? But
what if it's not? Like, what if... What if some of those... I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. No pun intended. But like, what? Because I don't remember where it is. But like, somewhere in the Bible, you might know where it is. It talks about. So we know that Jesus is God. God is Jesus. Like, God. Jesus is the exact representation of God, etc., etc. So when it talks about in Christ you live and breathe and move, you have your very being. That means in God. So like, and that's not something that's said just to people who like me who say they're friends with Jesus. That's includes everybody. So what if this world that we're moving about in, you're actually already moving about in like this, a murky bowl of soup is the picture that comes to mind. What if you're swimming through soup and the soup is God? And so actually, if you're already...
God is soup. I love this. This is good. Go ahead.
This is just a picture. It's an analogy. Or a fish bowl. I've got a fish tank opposite me that you can't see. I'm actually very glad you can't see it because I need to clean it. But if the water...
Same thing.
These two fish, they should be dead by now.
No.
Their life expectancy... Well, according to the internet, their life expectancy is 18 months. We did the work in our kitchen back in summer of 2020. So they are on borrowed time. I don't know what's going on there. Clearly, a bit of bugs is good for you, maybe. I don't know.
Apparently.
Anyway, I digress. Perhaps the fish tank is a better analogy than a murky bowl of soup, because actually murky soup doesn't taste nice, does it? So the fish tank. So the fish is swimming around the fish tank and it's swimming in the water. Like if the water is God, it has its whole being, its whole world, albeit a very small one because it's not a very big tank, its whole world is God. And so what if every conversation you have, potentially, God is in some of those conversations. I recognize you're going to say, yeah, but how do I know which one's a God? And I understand
Spider-Man.
that.
How do you know it's not Spider-Man?
Yeah, because Spider-Man is a fictional character, isn't he?
So is God.
In your opinion,
see how that goes? See, in your opinion, Spider-Man's not real, but I created Spider-Man in my head, and he's very real to me. We have conversations. We hang out. He tells me
so
good
maybe
things
maybe God is looking and showing up like Spider-Man in your head because he knows that you like Spider-Man, and so he's meeting
I knew
you
were going
where.
to say that.
You knew I was going to say that, did you?
I knew it. I was waiting for it to come up.
But it's possible. We don't know, and I know we laugh and we joke because like we're like on opposite sort of like planes with this. But I love the fact that we can still have a fun conversation about it. It's great. But it could be, couldn't it? So like I do believe that God meets people where they're at. And so for me, after my sort of scared at hell moment when I was 12 or 13, I actually was loved into relationship with God through a Bible weight loss course. And so like because I've always been quite curvy, and so I've got a friend then, again, I apologize if I've told this story before, but I've got a friend who got to know God through really deep, big questions. And I'm like, I'm not a big, deep questions kind of girl. I'm probably on the wrong podcast as a result, but hey, no, you asked me twice. So. But, so God does meet us where we're at. But yeah, the first, voice in your head that you kicked out that said, because I wanted to.
Yeah.
See, if that had been me, if I was having that conversation with God, okay, you say you wanted to, God, but you are love, and that doesn't sound loving. So what do you mean you wanted to? I'd have asked follow-up questions. I'm not sure that I would have immediately kicked him out because, it's conversation.
We'll dive into that. So if he said he wanted to, which 100% he wanted to, otherwise he would not have done it. So he wanted to.
What if it didn't go down the way that it's recorded in the Bible?
Okay, so he didn't drown the kids.
What if it, because this is one of the pieces that was explored a little bit in that book I was reading, is actually what if God knew there was going to be some natural disaster that was going to flood, the world, and therefore he warned Noah. I almost forgot Noah's name then. He warned Noah. Noah pleaded with people to come, and to be saved from it all. So actually, what if it wasn't ever God's intention? I don't know, and yes, I know it says in the Bible, God said, I'm really sick of humanity. But again, this is where I come back to
regret making them. And then how did Noah warn everybody on the planet? Did he have a megaphone? Did he have an internet?
Some people don't even necessarily know. They don't believe. Again, this is, there's so many different people who believe different things. Some people don't believe it was necessarily like a flood that covered the whole world, do they?
It was not. No. Yeah. It was probably a local flood. Yeah.
Right. So therefore he could have warned everybody. But actually, if there was another thorn, it floated away. I know what it was. No, I don't. Yes, I do. Okay, sorry, brain. It's quite late in the evening now.
Spider-Man's helping you out.
But if ultimately we go back to the bit we talked about earlier on, that actually Jesus is the ultimate picture of who God is, and so God, that that the story that we're being told, that those things that you said, or sorry, those things that Moses said you said, they don't sound like Jesus. They don't sound like love. What if that means God didn't actually say it? What if it was man trying to unpack? Like the Bible is true. It reveals the truth of God, or it reveals the truth of man's lies as they try and work out who God is. What if, I don't know, like what if it never went down the way that it's described? And I recognize that. Yeah.
So, if there's so many what ifs.
Sure, but life's full of what ifs. Questions are great.
I do. I love what ifs. But if a truth is full of what ifs, I tend not to believe it. I tend to toss it aside as malarkey. I'm not going to go with something that has too many questions, too many unsolved mysteries.
But there are
I'm not going to see that as true.
Across all the different civilizations have got different flood narratives, haven't they? Not just
correct.
Christianity.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different narratives from all kinds of different things. We even have we've got serpents from different tales doing different things as far as everlasting life and shedding of the skin and whatnot. But it all kind of ties into together. These are all very similar stories throughout history. Gilgamesh is a flood story that predates the biblical flood story. Right. So was that the original flood? Was God a part of that? Was Gilgamesh actually Noah? There's so many unanswered questions, and I'm not going to take it as truth. I can't accept it as being what happened.
That's fair.
So I do want to dive into the Passover, since it is the Passover, and we haven't talked about that. So do you believe this is an event that happened? Regardless of not exactly like it says in the Bible, I'm sure you wouldn't agree that, but is it an event that happened?
It's an event. Well, so in terms when Passover, when there was he killed the firstbborn of all the.
Yes. You jumped right into that one. Yes. You know me so well.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I don't know. So for me, my understanding of Passover was about gathering people together as part of that whole new covenant piece. The angel of death piece. I believe it actually happened the way. Did you ask me? Do I believe it happened the way it went down?
Well, yeah. What do you believe it happened at all? Well, second off, it does not say angel of death. It says the Lord came down.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, my translation, anyways. So
okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's fine. Yeah. So I mean, the Jewish people, they celebrate it every year, don't they? As a sort of a glorious piece that they, of their history. But I don't know how much of that is a way that they, the stories that they wrote to make sense of a really difficult time in their history. Like I don't know if it went down the way it went down because I wasn't there. And so I don't know. I know it's important to them. And so therefore I would show respect for that. But jumping straight back into the messy bit about God then killing all the firstborn babies, I don't believe that could have gone down the way that it's recorded in the Bible, because that's not love. There has to, like I said to you last time,
definitely not love.
No, exactly. There has to be more going on there. So whether that more going on there is, so I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know.
Interesting.
But I know it's important to them, and they've built it in as part of their tradition and part of, of what they celebrate every year. That's
fair enough. So I mean, are there any parts of it that you do find are true? Like, I mean, is there anything in there? The Passover, yeah.
Well, I mean, I believe that they did gather together and they did kill a lamb, because that lamb was meant to be like a foreshadowing of Jesus.
Those people.
Okay, your face.
I hear this all the time. It's
Okay.
a foreshadow of Jesus, but these people never saw Jesus, not once. They died. Generations passed before anybody saw Jesus whatsoever. So to have them killing things as a foreshadow, they never.
No, okay, so it wasn't a foreshadow for them, but with the benefit of hindsight, it becomes. There's loads of stuff, like some of the Psalms of David. I think which is the one that Jesus quotes at the cross? My God, why have you forsaken me?
Why have you forsaken me?
That there's things in there where he talks about, you can see my bones. There's loads of stuff in there which is like prophetic and pointing to how Jesus died. David wouldn't have known that at the time. It's only then them standing at the foot of the cross that they could. Go on.
I mean. Did the people who wrote the New Testament have the Old Testament?
Oh yeah, they knew it. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been.
So it's just kind of like Harry Potter 2 mentioning stuff from Harry Potter 1 at that point. We have the records of it. We can continue this story if we would like, because we know what this person said. Oh, that sounds like something nice. Let's put that over here and put that over here and blah, blah, blah. Oh, Jesus said this because I like this verse. So Jesus said this verse. I mean, how do you know that's not exactly what happened and none of it is true and it's all rubbish?
I mean, that could be a conclusion that people draw to if they want to. But ultimately, for me, like, I believe that what Jesus said is true. And so that, like, Jesus is God. And so I read it from that starting point. But the people who are standing at the foot of the cross, when you have this face that goes, I don't believe any of the words you're saying, it's absolutely fine. We can agree to disagree.
We're still a fun conversation.
Yeah, no, it's all good. But like, so the people at the foot of the cross, because this is one of the pieces when, I can't say it in Aramaic or whatever, but that phrase that's translated, my God, why have you forsaken me? Lots of people take that and go, oh, at the cross, God abandoned his son. I'm like, but that's not actually what happened. He was quoting the opening of, I forget which psalm it was. I don't even have I could go.
I know what you're talking about though. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you read that entire psalm, it finishes by saying that he was never abandoned, leaving aside the fact that, again,
it never says Jesus though. That psalm never once mentions Jesus by name.
But Jesus mentions himself by name by quoting it. They had this Jewish tradition. You've had rabbis on. I'm sure they probably told this law of first mention thing. So when because they knew their scriptures so well, you would, if somebody quoted the first line of a psalm, they would know the whole psalm. So by him saying that one opening line of that psalm, because he never referred to God the Father as God, apart from when he quoted that psalm. The rest of the time he referred to him as my Father. So I don't see him as being abandoned. I mean, you leaving aside the fact that, I mean, this is the Trinity, which you're going to raise your eyebrows at, but Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, they're three in one. Like, you couldn't physically separate them anyway, because they're all one being. So the idea that, like, God the Father could somehow, like, leave God the Son doesn't even like work anyway. But leaving that aside, I don't see Jesus quoting that as him saying, "Why did you forsake me?" He's referencing them back to that psalm, and that psalm ends by saying that I would never be forsaken. I don't know how we got onto that point.
I don't know either, but that was fun.
Okay. But Jesus identified himself, didn't he? So some of those, I mean, sometimes, where is it where he goes into is it when he goes into the temple, or there's bits in there where it talks about like, oh, his family moved to Egypt, and when they were called out of Egypt when he was a little boy, that fulfills this prophecy. So there are times when the New Testament will remind us that's why it fulfills it.
The people who wrote the New Testament try and match things up with the Old Testament. That's 100%
but they
what
don't.
we see.
But they're not all one author. It's not like J.K. Rowling who wrote the whole thing, is it?
True.
There's lots of, so therefore you've got, so for example, like across the four Gospels, I mean, is it Mark and Matthew? Mark borrowed from Matthew a little bit. I'm not quite sure, but
Matthew borrowed from Mark.
Matthew borrowed from Mark. There you go.
I think Mark was the oldest, and they all borrowed from there, and they just kind of made their own thing. Luke made that really crazy. John kind of took his own route. But John was Jesus' favorite, so maybe he had insights. I don't know, but anyway. But the reason, what's interesting to me, and the point I was getting to in a roundabout kind of way, you've got these four gospel accounts. Even if they spoke to each other and whatever, there's two interesting things in there for me. They're interesting to me. They might not be interesting to you or your audience, but I'm going to say anyway. But because you invited me to be here. But there's two things. I get really interested when the accounts are not exactly the same, because that leads me to think, well, actually, it makes it less likely that they copied each other. They're writing the Gospels, was it 50 years after it actually happened? Yeah.
And so they might not be remembering it. But then the other piece, some of the important stuff, they do line up. So like all of the Gospels have the Palm Sunday story, to want it the better word. Well, all of the Gospels have Jesus dying on the cross. Like they have
the major, the key points. They have the key points. But when you see the different versions like that, that leaves me to believe that it's less reliable.
Do you think?
As opposed to the opposite.
Isn't it just, it would be like, no, to me, see, it's no different to say, like, I'm looking out of the street now, and then, okay, I'm going to give you an example, actually. About a month ago, I bumped my car into the back of another car, and nobody got hurt, it was fine. But if you'd have been somebody standing, for me, sitting where I was behind the wheel, I've replayed it over in my mind a few times, and to me, it felt like the car in front of me went to go and changed his mind. I thought he was going to go, which is why I went and then smack into the back of him. If you were to ask the driver of that car what happened from his perspective, he'd have a different story because his perspective is different. If you've got somebody standing on the pavement watching it, they might tell it a slightly different way. Which of those is true? I would maintain they're all true, but they're all different perspectives according to where they're standing. Now, if you would ask me to tell you that story in 50 years' time, then, yes, it can get messy, but that's where you 2 Timothy 3:16 bit. God is, Holy Spirit is inspiring them, helping them, one would assume nudging their memories a little bit along the way. I don't know.
Well, I kind of went to the Total Recall thing, and then the original Total Recall was great. The remake was terrible. So that's kind of what I'm seeing with these original stories. They've got stories. They're like Total Recall. They've got certain things that happen. He goes to Mars. He has to remember things. Blah blah blah. And then you get the remake, which is shit, but it has the same key points. He goes to Mars. He remembers shit. And people try and kill him. We have to have those same points for that story to be the original story still. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here. Is they're taking from an original Mark, which Mark is taking from an original we don't have, and then changing it to fit their narrative, to a different director, a different writer. This is what it's going to happen in Luke. And man, I'm telling you, Luke is just the one that goes right off the edge. He's got the craziest things in there.
I thought, my understanding of it, like Matthew was writing to a Jewish audience, whereas Luke was to a Gentile audience.
They're all writing to different audiences. Exactly.
So therefore they will pick out certain bits of the story in order to even those like long genealogies that most of us like gloss over because they're words that we can't say.
They're important though because they're contradictions as well. There's things missing out of there. One's from Mary, one's supposed to be from Mary, one's from Joseph, and Joseph's not even related to Jesus. So how is that the same bloodline? It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even make sense. Anyway, sorry.
But it shows that this, to me, this is why I love filters, is how you read stuff. It just changes everything. So to me, all of those names, although it's a great big list of names and gets a bit boring, it shows me that everybody's important. But I also, as an aside, as a woman, I love the fact that you've got Rahab the prostitute in there. You've got Esther in there, who was, there's people in Jesus's direct bloodline who were, foreign born and all the rest of it. So to me, I just think that's brilliant. And it just goes to people who want to say, oh, well, women are not important. And, oh, we shouldn't let foreigners into our country and all of that stuff. I'm like, let's, piff. Yeah, exactly. My understanding of that was that I think one of the genealogies is described a certain way because it's for a Jewish audience, whereas the other one is for the Gentile or something. I'm not quite sure. But right, and giving stories and giving examples that audience would then understand better.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it not true. For me,
doesn't make it true either.
I mean, I would maintain it's true because there's stories of Jesus, but I recognize that wouldn't be good enough for you.
That's not convincing for me for some reason.
No, that's fair enough.
So we got dive into the death and resurrection of Jesus real quick here. So do you find that to be a love story?
Yes.
And why?
Why? Because it was Jesus, God going like, this is how much I love you. There was nothing that will stand in the way. I know you're going to go to me, but why did God need his son to die? God didn't need his son to die. That's not the way it played out. But did he want his son to die? Pardon?
Did he want his son to die?
Did he want his son to die? No. Did he allow his son to die? Yes. So you could go, ultimately all of these things, like everything we've spoken about, the fact that God allows something, he ultimately has responsibility. Of course he does, which I recognize is not a suitable answer for some people. So you talked about, we talked about people having cancer. Can we ultimately blame God for cancer because he allowed and he could cure everybody? Yes. Did God allow Jesus to die? Yes, absolutely. But I don't see Jesus as being this like sort of like with a gun to his head. Like he was
created for that purpose?
He wasn't created. He always is.
Okay. Well, he had to have. The Holy Spirit impregnated a woman. Or, a woman, a girl.
Okay.
We don't know how old she was.
So what you mean is, did he come as a man for the sole purpose of dying?
Yes.
He came as a man for the sole purpose of showing humanity who God is.
Well,
and then ultimately, look at that face.
Yes,
again.
Ultimately. This is all part of the plan. He had sacrifices in the Old Testament. He didn't like them. They weren't good enough for him. He didn't like the blood. The only blood that's going to be good enough for him is his own blood in the form of his kid. So he can take that magical blood, that special blood.
Sacrifices were never what God actually wanted. That was never God's plan. Yeah.
Then why did he set it up with Cain and Abel? If he never wanted it, and if it was never good enough for him, why did he set it up with Cain and Abel? And then in Malachi, he spends half of the book complaining of the sacrifices are damaged, crushed testicles, and he's so mad because it's not good enough for him. Would you give this to your governor? Would he respect you if you gave him this? Like all those things.
What if it was about heart posture? What if it was never about the way? Because again, this takes me back.
Point. He completely missed the point when he's complaining in Malachi about the gross and diseased animals.
But again, what if that some of the stuff that we attribute to as how God was reacting, what if that was never how God was reacting?
What if God was never there? There's a lot of what ifs. We're just throwing a lot of what ifs out here. I love the what ifs. We're going to call this episode "What If." That's what's going to happen.
But for me, the whole Cain and Abel thing, because you're quite right. You read that and you go, that doesn't seem really very fair. Like Cain was a gardener, so he bought veggies. Abel was a sheep. Well, I know it was a sheep farm. He was a animal farmer, so he bought animals. Like, how is the dude meant to know? But actually, so therefore I'm like, well, what if it's about heart posture and less about what they actually brought? Because later on, is it in Isaiah or somewhere where God talks about, sacrifices I never wanted? The true sacrifice is how you treat widows and orphans, and I'm paraphrasing terribly, but it's about how you treat people. It's not about the sacrifices per se. So I don't see it as being God going, oh, well, I didn't like the animal blood, I only want my blood, because that just doesn't, that's doesn't how it reads.
It doesn't sound loving. It doesn't sound loving.
Well, no, it doesn't. And it also just sounds, because for me, like God is love. And then we have in 1 Corinthians 13, this description of what love is. And so I often read that then as, okay, so it says love is patient, love is kind, love is not easily angered. We can insert God is patient, God is kind, God is not easily angered. I know you might not choose to do that, but that's like...
Well, I've read the Bible. Adam and Eve, Sapphira, that whole story there, the guy who didn't impregnate his daughter-in-law or sister-in-law and
But again, this is
no patience there.
Yeah, but see, this is, I agree with you. And this is why so many bits of it are frustrating to me. I'm going like, it doesn't make sense. But that's why it's still a journey that I'm on. But I'm like, actually, what if so much of this stuff didn't go down the way that it's directly written? And
You're almost there. You're almost there. It didn't go down the way it was written. Yes, true. Now we can, and as people, and you know that it was people getting it wrong.
Yes.
Just trying to figure life out, trying to figure out the world around them. And at this time, there were gods and demons and all kinds of things everywhere.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just naturally, that's what they're going to put down, is that they're talking to God. And it's going to,
yes, but that doesn't mean that God wasn't there. What if it's actually, again, it will be called the what if episode, absolutely. But what if some of this stuff that they're articulating is them trying to make sense of the world, and bearing in mind, like, none of this stuff really, to me at least, none of this stuff really makes sense until you see it through that lens of Jesus. And so until we have Jesus showing up on the scene, I'm sorry, but I'm going to wave my Jesus flag a lot.
I love it. Do it.
Yeah. And I know it's not one that's satisfactory to you. I understand that and I respect that. And at the same time, we could just agree to disagree. Yes. But if ultimately it's about humanity's attempt to muddle forward. So, for example, was it Abraham? I think it was Abraham. So Abraham's lot, at the time, they were sacrificing, children and killing all these different gods. And actually, their understanding of it, okay, instead of doing that, we're going to do that really lovely thing called circumcision, which to me is a tiny little thing. And I'm wincing on your behalf. No, I don't know. But it's their developing picture of trying to understand God as he actually wants to be known by them, who he actually is. But we don't see that properly until we get to Jesus, which I know is a huge swathe of history. But at the same time, God
just allows people to get it wrong for hundreds of years.
But he's gently nudging them along towards the rightness. And if
why not just come up and say, "Hey, you got it wrong. Don't sacrifice these animals."
Because the last time he invited them to do that, they were too scared and they ran away. He tried that. Don't you remember Moses?
He knows a way to do it where they wouldn't be scared.
What does he? Because those Israelites coming out of Egypt, he invited them into relationship. That's why I maintain religion that was never God's invention. Like, relationship was always the invitation from God. That's what he asked. Come and hang out with me. And they were like, no, we're scared. Moses, you tell us what to do. And thus the law was born. Like,
interesting. So God knew that they would be scared if he said it a certain way, but he did it anyways. So why would God scare them on purpose?
I don't think he did scare them on purpose.
Well, he could have done it a way it wouldn't have scared them, right?
But could he have done, given the journey that I don't know, could the journey that they've been on, they've spent hundreds and hundreds of years. You could also call this the I don't know episode if you want to. That'd be your subtitle.
What if I don't know?
Yeah, they'd spent hundreds and hundreds of years in captivity, slaves. I don't know that. Yes, given enough time, they could have heard God as he wants to be known. And that's what we've got. We've got this passage of time, and eventually Jesus shows up and, and we move forward and here we are today. But for all I know, God in his all-knowing, maybe there wasn't a way that those people could receive him directly as he wanted to be known in that way at that time.
I wouldn't have done it. I mean, if I knew it was going to scare them and push them away from me, my kids, same thing, I wouldn't have done it. I would have chose a better route.
But they still had communication with him. It wasn't necessarily his first choice in communication. But say, for example, if one of my kids, and I can't take credit for this analogy, I heard this in a video literally this morning, but if one of my kids said to me, "Okay, Mum, from now on, I only want to communicate with you via text message." I mean, they would never do it because I'd send voice notes and it would drive them crazy. But imagine they did. And I would hate that. Like, it would be really, really hurtful. But I would communicate with them through text message and all that time be wooing them back into actual let's have a proper conversation. I wouldn't just go, "Oh, well, if you only want to talk to me through text message and don't want to talk to me face to face, I'm not going to speak to you." That's, to me, that's what I see God doing when they said, "Okay, we don't want to talk to you face to face. We want Moses to tell us what to do." That wasn't God's first choice, but he met them where he was at because he's playing the long game and goes, "Okay, I'll do it the way you want." And then he's nudging them along little by little, and then Jesus shows up, and then ta-da!
Well, maybe Jesus should have showed up earlier to help them with their confusion.
Now that is one I did have a conversation with God about. I remember what he said. Because I did actually, this is last year or the year before sometime, maybe it was last year, I don't remember the date, it doesn't matter. I said to God, there's a massive long stretch of time between even if you don't believe in like evolution, but regardless of how long you think the world took to be made, even if you believe in a relatively young earth, it's still thousands and thousands of years. It's thousands and thousands of years from the earth to be made until Jesus comes along. There's literally, well, not literally because it's not an exact number, but about 2,000 years, which from our perspective is another huge swathe of time. Why didn't you have Jesus come sooner? And he said, I didn't have Jesus come sooner because there are people who otherwise would not have been born. He said, every single person that has been born from the year dot all the way through until the end of the age to come, all of those people make a difference and matter for eternity. That's why he didn't come any sooner. And look at your little skeptical face. It's a cute little skeptical face.
It would have been easier if he just started us all in heaven. That would have been a lot easier than this whole charade where we've got murder, rape, kids with cancer, all these horrible, horrible things that we have to live through just so we can wait for God's plan to be finished.
But it was about relationship. It's about free choice. Like you can't magically, if you twist somebody's arm into loving you, I know it's the free will card and you don't like it when that one's played, but like or you've got some really clever retort.
No, go ahead.
But no, you're going to let me dig myself a hole and then you're going to go,
well, that's how it works on this show. Well, you know that.
Yeah, it's okay. But like, if I don't even remember what I was saying now, forget the free will one. Like, if you've got to force people into loving you, it's not love, is it?
Yeah.
And
if
so
you're giving them an ultimatum, love me or burn in hell, that's not love either.
Yeah, but we already know that I don't necessarily agree with that ultimatum anyway.
That's true. I have that written right here, as a matter of fact. But I did want to dive into the Jesus thing a little bit more before we head out here. The resurrection part of it.
Yes.
So that happened, right? As far as you believe. So God died. Did God actually die, or did he just kind of go to sleep or just cease to exist for a little bit and then come back in 3 days? How does that work for you?
His body that he used to walk around on the earth ceased to be anymore. But it's the same when we as humans, humanity? I mix humanity and humans.
I love
us as humans. Humans, yeah. Us as humans. Don't make me say Canada is what I said the other day instead of Canada. Humans, when we die, I mean, I would maintain animals too, but that's because I've had pets that I love. But humans, when they die, they don't just cease from the perspective of like us, the people that love them. Yes, they're dead, but they don't die forever. The essence that makes them them. So yes, his body stopped breathing, it ceased to exist and whatever, but that doesn't mean that God died in the sense that he disappeared off the planet for 3 days.
So nothing happened to God. He was fine.
I mean, Jesus did die. Like he physically went through. Pardon?
His body died, but he didn't die. Did Jesus actually die?
He did die in the same way that if I shot myself in the head, I would die.
But he's God. God can't die.
He can, because he was fully human.
Here's where the math comes in. Fully 100% human and 100% God, right? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, but I don't. Yes, and I can't explain how that's possible. That's
because it's illogical. You can't be 100% of something and then 100% of something else. It's just that's not how math works. So no. I mean, help me understand this. Help me wrap my head around it. God is in the body. He's a Jesus. Right? And then this body goes around, this body dies. But God is still alive. So God never died, just the body.
Yes, in the same way that if I shot myself in the head, my body would die. But the thing that makes me me, I'm glad to say my body is not what makes me be. My body is a bit,
So
what makes me me is this. Though? Pardon?
What did he sacrifice at that point? If he didn't actually die, just this body, which was going to die anyways, and it's pointless. I mean, we're all spirits apparently going to heaven or hell or wherever we go. And so what was the point of this ultimate sacrifice if he didn't really even sacrifice anything?
Well, he still had to go through a really horrible death. But I think the whole dying thing, he went down into Hades or whatever it's called, and
the place that he made and controls.
Okay, and then preach the gospel and all of that good stuff. But isn't him dying on the cross? It's there as a representation of him dying so that we don't have to. Like that kind of like. Pardon?
I think it's pointless and disgusting.
Okay.
As a parent, I would not require death from my kids. I would not require them to kill anything to me. I would not require them to ask for forgiveness in such a way. Now,
but he didn't know. Hang on, let's back up. I think this is important. God didn't need Jesus to die on the cross for people to be forgiven, because
Exactly.
Jesus went. But they didn't. Jesus went around forgiving people all the time.
Yes.
That's why they got so cross with him. That's why they stuck him on the cross.
Yes.
God doesn't requure.
They got cross with him.
Yeah, well, I mean, but they didn't. Yeah. So if Jesus is God, which I believe he is, and we're going to just suspend disbelief for those of you who don't.
Yeah.
So God didn't need Jesus to die for forgiveness.
Yes.
What if the cross is more about this representation of, actually, this is how much I love you. I will do this in your place because I love you. And it's more about allowing us to see actually how loving God is, and so we can forgive ourselves, so that we can be, reconciled into relationship with God. Like, God didn't go anywhere. He didn't stop loving people prior to the cross. It wasn't like Jesus had to die. Okay, now I can love you.
Now I can forgive people. Well, Hebrews 9:22, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. He is capable of doing it without the bloodshed. We saw Jesus do it. He did it with David and Bathsheba area way back when. We'll get there too. A quick question about that. But he is able to do it. So I see the death as kind of pointless. You mentioned just to show people that this is how much he cares, but there's so many other ways to do it that it's not so bloody and violent and pointless. I don't see it as a necessary thing. I see it obviously as disgusting and not necessary. Could he have chosen a better way?
Well, like cupcakes and balloons, you mean?
Well, I don't know, maybe. But I mean, if Jesus doesn't die, let's just pretend that Jesus did not die. Would God still be able to forgive mankind for pissing him off? Yes.
Yes.
Now, what sounds better? Just being able to forgive people, showing them that you love them by forgiving them, or creating a copy of yourself and killing it to show them how much you care?
But isn't what happens, the whole thing that started all the way back with evil and the devil and all the rest of it, isn't some of the stuff that happened at the cross around is defeating death, defeating Satan, defeating all of the evil? Like, isn't that there are lots and lots of different, like, do they call it atonement theory, or this theory of what happened at the cross? And this more recent, is it John Calvin who gave us penal substitution, whatever, angry God stuff, like that's really popular and mainstream because of history, I suppose. But again, that wasn't the original. Go back pre 200 years ago, their view of the cross was around defeating Satan, undoing all of the evil in the world. That's the stuff that happens at the cross. And you have a whole other question. I can read on your face.
Why does he need to kill himself to defeat Satan? See, we just keep
rather
going
kill
back to the
himself.
same thing.
He'd rather kill himself than kill people.
What about Satan? What about the bad guy? Why create the bad guy? Why let him loose? Why have to kill yourself because of this bad guy that you created on purpose and let him loose on purpose, knowing exactly what he's going to do? It doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't add up.
No. But I don't know. See, the whole God would have made the angels knowing that Satan would do that.
Well, just don't make that one angel that's going to rebel and cause all of this death and destruction. Like, that would just make more sense.
It would, but then, so that takes me back to that there has to be something else going on here that I don't know. Because you're quite right. Logically, it would be like, well, let's just don't make him. Like,
Yeah, I mean, completely.
That would totally make more sense. But I don't know. Do we need to have the option in order to actually love? Do we need to have the option to not love? Otherwise,
not loving and death and destruction are two different things. Satan is not there just to show us that what not love looks like. He's here to steal, kill, and destroy. So I mean,
yes, but that
doesn't. Go ahead.
But if God is love, like kill, think whatever the other word you was said, and destroy is the opposite of that, isn't it? Like if God is love, and I still maintain you have to have, in order to actually be able to love, it has to be a choice. You have to have the option of not loving. That's ultimately how Satan fell. Again, my understanding of it, it's a bit of a grey area. We've already alluded to the fact I don't do big, deep conversations, big thoughty bits. But my understanding of it, and this is probably something I need to look at, because again, this is based on what I was told growing up, and some of the stuff I was told growing up is, or as we've already established, is not actually how it went down. But my understanding of it is that Satan was one of the angels. He was beautiful and lovely, and he chose to rebel against God. Yeah. So, and so therefore that's the origins. Now, yes, ultimately, like we've already said, God has to take ultimate responsibility for that, because he chose to allow him to be created, for example. Right. Yes. And I believe, and you're right, and God's got broad enough shoulders to cope with that. And yes, it doesn't make any sense from our perspective. Will it make sense within the perspective? I can't speak. Will it make sense within the perspective of all of time? Yes, ultimately. But again, I recognise that that's not a satisfactory answer for all of the people and for many of your listeners.
Yeah, well, no, but I appreciate the effort anyways.
Okay.
I did want to go back to, you did mention the fell from heaven thing. There are two spots in the Old Testament this comes from. It's Ezekiel 28:2 and Isaiah 14:4-7, 28, the whole chapter really. But these are very specifically talking to the king of Babylon and the king of Tyre. And it mentions them by name in there. Not once is the word Satan used, not once is the word devil used. These aren't.
But there's lots of times, some of these bits, they use Babylon as, like in Revelation, they'll use Babylon as a side note for something else.
They did not like the Babylonians.
No, they did not. No. But equally, ultimately, I believe, like, if we're going to take my line of thought to its natural conclusion, I believe that ultimately all the Babylonians will end up in the age to come. But it's going to be a messy old place and quite busy and quite full, isn't it? But like, yeah. But so I think I understand that some of these pieces where they name them by name, they're metaphors or illusions, or not illusions, that's the wrong word, it's probably a word that you would use, metaphors or pictures for him or for what went down.
So these are describing the king of Tyre and king of Babylon, but they're supposed to be metaphors for the devil.
I don't have them open in front of me, and quite honestly, I don't know those passages as well as you know them, so I don't have an answer to that one.
Well, let's start with Ezekiel 28. It starts off with, say to the ruler of Tyre. So we're talking to the ruler of Tyre. Mm-hmm. You have done this in the pride of your heart. You have said that I am God. That's to the king of Tyre. Not once is it said Satan did this. We're talking about a king who thought he was higher than God and blah, 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 blah.
But is it possible then? Is it possible it was said to the king of Tyre, but it was also a picture of what also went down in heaven way before? I don't know. Yeah, I knew you were going to laugh.
That's pushing it. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I probably haven't read every single word of the Old Testament. To be honest, like, the Old Testament.
Scholar or. Yeah.
Oh, no. But to be fair, like we acknowledged last time, you are better read than many Christians, to be fair, which is quite ironic, really.
Well, thank you for that. We are closing out here, but we're a little bit past time. Thank you for staying. I did have one final thing, because we did talk about last time a little bit the David and Bathsheba story, and the kid, and how God had him suffer for 7 days before he killed him with a sickness. And you had mentioned that you were going to talk to God about this. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to God about this.
I completely forgot to. I'm very sorry. My mind's a little bit ADHD, and if I don't write stuff down, it's like out of sight, out of mind. If you'd have reminded me, I definitely would. But the answer that...
I write everything.
Oh, God, it's not just me. No, I must confess, and because I didn't go back and rewatch our episode, I completely forgot. My case is we had so much fun, but the answer that comes to mind for that one would go back... Did it go down the way that it's described in there? Like, I just don't know. If? Yeah, I know. It's that what if piece. I don't know. What
if it did? What if it did go down like that? What if God did strike that child with a sickness and it died 7 days later?
Yes, then that would be mean, which is what leads me to believe, actually, if this is that something that we would see, because the only time we see Jesus really being a bit cross with folks is when he drove cross with the Pharisees
in the temple,
to have been hypocritical, or when he drove all the folks out of the temple. So is Is that something that we would see Jesus doing? No. So to me, I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound like God. That sounds like somebody trying to understand what's going on there. So I'm not sure that it went down the way it's described in there.
Interesting. So Spider-Man did not accidentally kill Gwen Stacy. He saved her, but the story just didn't go down like that. That's what I meant.
You can call him Spider-Man if you want to. He'd rather you call him Dad, but you can call him.
That's weird. That's weird for me. Either way. I've enjoyed my new telepathic discussions with Spider-Man. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But we are out of time here. Thank you for everything coming back. Anything you want to plug, and last words here at the end.
Well, no, just I was going to say to you. So next time you invite God into and have a conversation with him, don't take the first answer. Go and say, okay, that doesn't sound like the God that the God that Elle loves. That doesn't sound like how she's describing him. What's really going on? Ask him some follow-up questions. Would be my advice. Right. As for plugging stuff, no, I mean, if there's any folks that think like, as the way that I do and they want to explore their relationship with God, they can do that at youier.com. I do these little love notes. Youier.
Youier. Youier. Youier. Yeah.
Youier. Yeah, it's you plus IER. You, an intentional, expectant relationship. That's a whole other conversation for another day. Probably you wouldn't. Well, yeah, no, I don't, to be honest, I don't know that it's one we'd have on this podcast because with the context of the sort of conversations we have. But yeah, that would be the only thing I would say, is that really, I'm not specifically plugging anything at the moment or ever. I'm just doing life and being me. But I do hope I would, for anybody, I guess, who's like, I don't know, ask God a question, because I fully maintain that like he wants to be in relationship with everybody, so ask him a question. If you don't like the first answer, go, okay, that doesn't sound very good to me, what's going on? Explore it some more.
Is that what, just keep trying. Eventually God will say something
I knew you were going to say
that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Elle. This has been a blast. We'll stay in contact, and I'll let you know when this comes out.
You're very kind.
And that's all the show there is for you today. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard and want to help keep the recording light on, simply go to patreon.com/bswthepodcast and sign up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will give you access to the patron feed, unaired conversations, early access to each episode, and much more. For the latest events, BSW swag, and a peek behind the scenes, head on over to the show's ever-evolving webpage at thebiblesayswhat.com. The Bible Says What the book is out. Head on over to thebiblesayswhat.com and get yourself and your grandma a signed copy. Thanks to the cosmic powers of the internet, it is now possible to buy me a beer or coffee online. Simply go to buymeacoffee.com/BSW the podcast and click the appropriate buttons. If you can't support the show monetarily, please like, share, and or leave a review. As always, you can find me at the Bible Says What Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Instagram pages. You can also reach me at bswthepodcast@gmail.com. And no matter which platform you use to listen to your podcasts, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next episode. Until then, would you kindly pick up your Bibles and read them? Spider-Man is greater than the Christian deity. Why would anyone want to worship such an egotistical madman? Praise Spider-Man. Let's start the show. That's stupid. All right, we won't make the Spider-Man symbol at the end. I don't know what that is. Ruin the whole thing. All right, this time with feeling.